and welcome back to Printed. I'm your host, Vanessa Gomez, and we're back with our department series, this time talking about the public facing side of a publishing house, the Publicity Department. To help us explore this department, we're going to be joined by Sanna Wani, Publicity Manager of Between the Lines, a Toronto based independent literary publisher. As always, we're going to be talking with our guest about the publicity department in general, but we're going to also ask specific career advice for those who want to get into this department in particular. But before we dive in, don't forget to follow and subscribe to the podcast. We have some amazing guests lined up for you for this season that you do not want to miss. So, without further ado, let's get into it. I'm so excited for today's episode because we are going to be talking about a department that is not often discussed when we talk about publishing, which is the publicity department. And we have with us an incredible guest joining. She is the publicity manager at Between the Lines, a poet, and a publishing professional based in Toronto. She is also the author of the award winning poetry collection, My Grief, the Sun, and has worked in the past with Cooper Canyon Press, Fairwind Publishing, Sid J Stories, and the University of Toronto Press. She also works as a freelance developmental and copy editor with a variety of Canadian publishers, including House of Anansi, Baseline, Bookhawk, and more. Please, everyone, welcome Sanna Wani to Printed. Hi, Sanna. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Are you ready to get started?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. So I like to start with a section that I call the "What are you" section to warm up things up.
Mm-hmm.
So, Sanna, what are you reading at the moment, listening to, and watching? It doesn't have to be with books. It can be any series or movies that you like that you're watching at the moment, or any music that you're listening to at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. I'm actually reading Moderation by Elaine Castillo. She's an author from the States who I really love. She's Filipino. She writes a lot about migrant experiences, um, like progressive, revolutionary experiences. Her first book, America is Not the Heart, is one of my favorites. So I was really looking forward to her next book. Yeah.
Oh, very nice, very nice. And what are you listening to or watching?
Ooh, listening to or watching? I hate to be a cliche.
No, please.
but I am only listening to and watching everything to do with Wicked at the moment. And I'm like late to the bandwagon, but I just like watched the first movie and have been listening to the soundtrack and really, really loving it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I understand that because I watched the first movie. I was like, when is the second one dropping? I
I
need that.
know.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
totally get that. Well, from my part, I've been reading a book called Heart the Lover by Lily King. I only have a few pages left, but it's really good. I would recommend it to anyone. I'm still listening to a YA book called Shatter Me. I'm hoping I will be able to finish it before the end of the year. Um, and what am I watching? Oh, yesterday because the trailer for a new Hunger Games movie dropped, so I got a little bit nostalgic and I started watching the Hunger Games again. So I guess that's what I'm watching at the moment. Well, thank you so much for that. Now let's start and let's talk a
Mhm.
little bit more about you. How did you get started in the industry, and more
Mhm.
specifically, how did you end up in the publicity department?
Yeah, that's a great question. I got started in the industry like a lot of people do by being a writer or being interested in writing. So I came at it definitely from that perspective. I was going to do my undergraduate studies in English. I ended up switching over to religious studies, interestingly, just because of a professor that I really loved. But I was still like, poetry has always been my wheelhouse, and I was still integrating that into my studies. And then after my master's was over, in like 2021 or so, I think I did an internship with one of the like best poetry presses in America, which is called Copper Canyon Press. So they were like, it was a dream come true. It was really exciting. And then it just so happened, the reason why I'm a publicist now is I think there's a lot of these stories. It's just like coincidence and fate a little. It just so happened that when I did my internship at Copper Canyon, the publicist just got a new job. So then she was leaving, and there was this big hole in the department, and they needed to hire someone, and there was a lot of work that was suddenly available to do in publicity. And they were really wanting one of the interns to become like a marketing or publicity specialist intern. And so I, thought about it, and I was like, you know what, why not? Like, I like editing, I like editorial, but I'm interested to see what's happening with marketing and publicity, because it's kind of like mysterious. People don't tend to be very forthcoming with it. So I was curious about it and thought it could benefit me as a writer as well,
Mm-hmm.
to know more about marketing and publicity. So that I got a bunch of work done that way. And then I ended up working quite closely with one of the managers at
Mm-hmm.
Copper Canyon, and then helping to hire their next publicist. So just got this like boatload of experience very quickly, which was very
Mm-hmm.
serendipitous and lucky. And then I just got my next job shortly after that at Fernwood, and was their publicity and promotions manager for 2 years.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And you're right. I think majority of people that start in the industry is just towards like these happy accidents. Like you end
Yes.
up like knowing someone that knows someone, or someone gets
Mm-hmm.
like another job and you just get pulled into that
Totally.
department. I think that's how most people start. Well, for those who might not know, as
Mm-hmm.
you said, publicity and marketing, not many people talk about it when it comes to publishing. So for those who might not be familiar, what does the publicity department take care in a publishing house?
Yeah, that's a great question. So marketing and publicity kind of go hand in hand, but what distinguishes marketing from publicity, there's a great shorthand that my coworker at Fernwood and I used to use, which is that marketing faces the back end of the industry. So it talks to people who talk to other people about books, like let's say distributors, let's say booksellers, let's say metadata people, sales data. That tends to be the concern of marketing, whereas for publicity we tend to talk to people who talk to audiences. So, and we also speak directly to consumers and to people who are readers. So that is media, that is television, that is radio, that is influencers, that's anybody who is engaging with the consumer or looking more outwardly towards the book. So it's kind of like a back end, front end distinction, I think, whereas publicity is, yeah, very focused towards the front end and very focused towards the public.
Right. And because of how you're explaining, marketing is kind of the back end, and then publicity is kind of like the front facing part of
Mm-hmm.
like going to the consumer. Do marketing and publicity work very close together because of that?
Very, very, yeah, very,
Mhm.
very closely together, as they are kind of like two sides of the same coin.
And then if marketing and publicity get involved, when it comes to like either talking to like the people that are going to buy the books, as you said, like the booksellers
Mm-hmm.
or like librarians or things like that,
Mm-hmm.
and then if publicity talks to like the consumer or the media,
Mm-hmm.
how early in the publishing process does, in this case, publicity get involved
Mm.
in the book? Is it as early as acquiring the book, or is the book already in development and the publicity gets involved?
That's a great question because there's a lot of different answers. So, publicity can get involved as early as acquiring the book because we've all seen those, what are they called? The like world rights publishing house deals, deals news. So, that is technically, I think, a form of publicity. There's also for smaller presses like ours, authors just do that on their own. We recently had an acquisition with Chris Dixon, who's like an activist in the States, and he made a wonderful post about the contract that he received from both us and AK Press. And so that's a similar form of that. So it can begin at the acquisition stage. But usually I like to talk about the three times. Like there's three kinds of leads with publicity. There's usually a 6 month mark, which is called a long lead. So it's publicity that needs a long time to acquire. So you tend to chase it maybe even up to a year before. Um, there's certain cases. And then there's 6 months or a year. That would be the long lead. And then there would be a medium lead, which is 3 months. So things like op eds, things like reviews, they can fall either in the long or the medium. And then there's short leads, which is usually quicker. It's journalistic media that is like very fast. It's influencers. It can be just things that are more off the cuff, and that's usually anywhere from 4 to 2 weeks ahead. So it really, I don't know, publicity is very strange in that it appears very organically, and then it really depends on the author. It really depends on the media landscape, what the book is about. There's so much that's very like mercurial about it. It really can change a lot. But those are some big overviews on when I think it can start in the process.
Absolutely, no, that makes sense. And
Mm-hmm.
Its publicity also involved after the book is published?
Of course, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. There's a joke that my ex-boss used to say, which is that if we think of book publishing as a kind of like oh my god, the word is escaping me.
Like a timeline, I
Assembly
believe.
line, like an
Okay,
assembly
assembly
line.
line, yes.
Yeah,
Hmm.
if we think of it as an assembly line, then all of the books land in publicity. Like they kind of move their way through
Hmm.
editorial, through production, through marketing, and then they just
Latin publicity.
live with me forever. And so that's kind of fun about it. You know, there's backlist titles that will continue to generate publicity. And interestingly, one of my ex mentors also told me that poetry has the longest shelf life for publicity. So, I mean, I think it's kind of just a based on her experiences, but she said, you know, kind of like poetry, you can have poetry from 2001 that will still be reviewed today because someone will find it relevant, which doesn't happen as often with other genres. But in general, backlist titles, you can have books that really make an impact and then continue to generate publicity long, long after. They're no longer front list or backlist, which is also a shorthand that maybe your audience knows already, but it's like titles that are new tend to get more publicity, and titles that are older tend to then live out their life cycle and kind of
Okay.
sediment.
I
Yeah.
see. No. Yeah, that's wow, that's great. I didn't know that. That's so interesting. And I'd love to go back to a point that you made
Mm-hmm.
about like every single title ends up in publicity after they go through like every single department.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that I have spoken to like smaller presses and they say
Mm-hmm.
like, because we're small, sometimes our roles overlap. So we
Mm-hmm.
we wear many hats. So I was
Yes.
wondering, as you said, between the lines is a small press and indie
Yes.
press. So how does your role overlap with? We already talked a little bit about with marketing, but with like
Mm-hmm.
other departments as well, like with sales or editorial. How does that work?
Oh my god, so much so. There's so much overlap at small presses. I mean, our team is very, very small. We have a staff collective of like 4 people, I think. So our roles really, really overlap. I would say publicity overlaps. Let's say with editorial, the first thought I had was about author care. So publicity and editorial tend to be the two that are the most involved with the author, and often like the author's big feelings around their book end up with publicity and with editorial. Publicity because it's like the reception of your book into the world, editorial because it's like, okay, we have to create this object together and make it as good as we can make it. So I feel like with editorial, I end up overlapping with my coworker the most around author care. We kind of have to be aligned in our approach in how we want the author, like how we want to approach the author, how we want to communicate, and how we want to make sure that the author feels taken care of, because in some interesting ways like publicity is also kind of a clientele sort of role, because you are sort of interfacing with the author in a way that is quite unlike your coworkers, because there's something that the author is hoping to get that you kind of are the gateway to, even though you don't really have any control over it. So it's very interesting and diplomatic is what I would say. And then with production, there's a lot of overlap with social media and with graphics. Like, I do a lot of work with graphics now, and it just helps if you have that skill set and you can share the workload, because there's just so many things that always need to be produced. And so that would be the greatest area of overlap there. And then marketing, we already sort of discussed. It's
Yeah,
just like
it's
everything.
just like everything. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that makes sense. And with what you were talking about before, like
Hmm.
when it comes to like those long leads or those short leads, when
Yes.
you get like op-eds or reviews or even
Hmm.
talking to
Hmm.
influencers, I'm wondering, how do you measure success in a publicity department? Is it
Yeah.
through how many reviews you get? Is it through how many awards does the book get? How
Hmm.
many events you get invited to? How does that work inside your work right now?
That's a great question. I mean, it's kind of like we have these meetings with authors very early on
Mhm.
where we talk to them. Like, I like to ask the question of, like, what kind of publicity do you like? Because not every author wants the same kinds of publicity. So, some authors really, really do not want to do interviews. They really want me to focus on reviews. Some authors would really like to focus on events, and they don't care so much about reviews. There's endless iterations of what a publicity plan can look like based on what the author's comforts and desires are, but also based on what the strengths of the press are. So we're not like small indie publishing is not really going to be running huge ad campaigns, right? Like we just simply don't have the capital. But we can do certain things that like bigger presses can't, which is like individualized care or like really intentional kind of like plan making that suits the author's needs. So I would say that a successful publicity campaign, given that, dynamic rubric, for me, it's when the press is pleased is not the right word because I don't want to sound like it's a people pleaser position, though it it because it really can be. You really can go down a rabbit hole, and I think strong boundaries are very helpful for people who do this work. But I would say if the author is genuinely happy, if my coworkers are also involved in a way, if I feel like I've done the best that I can in delivering towards the needs of the book and the author, and if there is genuinely a buzz that has been created around the book, be that big or small, like just depending on the size, right? It should be calibrated to the book. I'm usually quite happy with that. I think that um if I feel like the book has reached readers that it needed to reach and in unique ways, maybe readers that the authors didn't even know that they had. That's something. It's those like kind of like humanistic um ways that I think success should be measured, because there is another side of things which is much more data driven that I right, I do that, and I do have that available as like an important way to keep measuring the success. Like I keep track of every single social media post, I keep track of every single review, the reach, ads, like all of the data is really important to drive a direction. But I think at the end of the day, publicity is so ineffable, and things will things will be taken up in ways that like I don't even know or none of us could have been predicted.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Once it's
yeah,
out and it's in the media and it's with the readers,
it's
like it's out of
it's
your control.
it's living
Yeah.
its own life. Yeah.
It's living its
Yeah.
own life. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I bet that when it comes to publicity, it also changes depending on the title, depending on
Of
the
course.
genre.
Yeah.
So I guess that's why, the way to like measure it, it also changes because
Mhm.
the way to handle the campaign itself, it changes.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
And with all the skills and with all the kind of tasks that you're talking about,
Mhm.
contacting the media, author care, just like kind of like getting involved with other departments, wearing many hats, I bet that as a publicist,
Mhm.
especially in a smaller indie press, you need like a ton of skills that you can use in your everyday task.
Mhm.
But off the top of your head, which one you will say, like, if you want to be a book publicist, these are the top five that you at least will need?
The top 5 skills.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great question. I think like time management and prioritization. Like
Okay.
there's always, I think, and boundaries, like I said before, because there's always a gazillion things coming at you from a million different directions. And almost like one time I was in a staff meeting and I described it as like I go to like this beach, and like sometimes there's a high tide and sometimes there's a low tide, and my job is to try to make sure I can get as many good goodies out of the whatever is washing up on the beach. And so it depends on like the state of the year. It depends on like what is going on with that particular beach. It depends on what has been dumped in other places that's going to wash ashore. But I have to make sure I manage my time well and I prioritize what needs to be prioritized. Otherwise, things will just get washed away. If you don't catch a lead, if you don't make sure you are following up on certain things, they will just get washed back away. And maybe somebody else will take care of them. Like there's book publishers that manage without publicists because authors or other people will just step into those roles, but then a lot gets washed away and you don't kind of capitalize on the publics that could be interested in your book. So I would say, yeah, time management, like personal organization, just keeping track, like tracking is huge for my role because I feel like I just put my brain in a spreadsheet and then and then it's not, I find it's very, very helpful for just making sure you can both report back to your coworkers on what's going on. You can make sure that the author knows what has happened, and also that you can follow up and make more informed decisions in your next campaigns if you're keeping track of everything. So those would be the three: time management, prioritization, and tracking.
And do you have another two to have like the top five?
Top five. Okay, two more.
Mhm.
Boundaries, like I
Yeah,
said,
boundaries. Yeah.
because I think publicity, I don't know if this is an article or if it was just something in the industry news that I saw, but like I saw some heuristic like about publicity being like the number one spot for burnout in
Oh,
employees. And like it
wow.
tends to be the position where the most marginalized, kind of like identity wise people are in
Hmm.
publishing, and then there's a really high proportion of turnover. I think I do know
Oh,
that as a fact. I could try to go find
that's
where.
very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
but it's because I think that with some of the things I've said, there's just a huge possibility for burnout. And I think that
Mm.
boundaries come in really helpfully here, because you could do publicity for one book for the rest of your career. Like you could devote yourself to
Absolutely.
one
Just
book
down
and
the rabbit hole.
it's just like an
Yeah.
endless pot of work, right? Like
Hmm.
it's a rabbit hole of work, and
Hmm.
you just have to decide when you feel like things have been enough, and be able to also push back against things that might try to involve you further and avoid from your time, again, time management, your time being taken away, because then it will
Right.
divert from other projects. So boundaries are really important for making sure
Hmm.
that the work that you do as a publicist for your press doesn't end up, getting messy, or pouring over your own cup, hurting your
Hmm.
health, blah blah blah.
Absolutely. And one more.
And one more:
One more.
creativity.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
creativity, because
Hmm.
it can get really cookie cutter and it can get really
Hmm.
repetitive, and it doesn't
Hmm.
work for the books. So you have
Hmm.
to be able to change things and try new things and be open to hearing suggestions and really like be creative on the fly.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, especially if you're working with different books all the time. You definitely need
Mhm.
that creative mind of how am I going to approach this campaign?
Yeah.
And with these skills that we're talking about, I'm wondering to kind of show that you have those skills if you're interested in the
Mhm.
publicity department. Do you think that someone needs like to show like a formal PR communications training degree, or do like, other kind of fields of experience also work, like journalism, social
Mm.
media? How does that work when you're like trying to like hire someone or when you're
Mm.
being hired? Yeah.
Right. Well, I have no formal training personally, so I think
Hmm.
I am a little biased to say that I don't think you particularly need the formal training, but I do think it is a benefit. I think it does, like any skill training, professional development, it does help. But I do think there's no replacement for learning on the job. Like being able to just get into the work and be able to have a campaign that you're responsible for and deliver on. There's nothing I think that can teach quite like that. And I don't really think like any background will bring their own take and flavor on that campaign and on the ability to deliver on that work. So I don't think it's limited to um, anyone in particular of any kind of background, like a journalist. I know one person who's a publicist who used to be a journalist. I know somebody else who just started as a publicist, has always been a publicist. People in publishing come from such wacky backgrounds, right?
Yes, they
Like,
do. From
like
everywhere. Yeah.
everywhere, everywhere. So yeah, I know somebody who used to be in construction who now
Oh,
works in
wow.
publishing. You know what
Hmm.
like it's just there's such a diversity. And so I think it just matters, yeah, having the skills, having the
Hmm.
commitment, and having the ability um at the end of the day to just put in the work that needs to be done
That
is,
makes
yeah.
sense. Yeah, and I think that's gonna be a relief for anyone listening that's, worrying
Mhm.
about whether they can afford like getting to like a publishing certificate or
Yeah.
like a publishing master's. Like, no, you can
Mhm.
actually like apply to an internship, get the work experience, and you can get your
Exactly.
foot in the door.
Exactly.
You don't need that. You don't need to
Mhm.
like get more student loans or anything. You can actually get into the industry without those. So
You can, but it's hard. It's
it's
hard.
hard,
It's really
absolutely.
hard. It's
Yeah.
really hard. And I do think there is something gained from the certificates. So
Hmm.
I do
Yeah.
think they are a really helpful and
Hmm.
useful path as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And now this is going towards more into like person like practical advice for those
Mm-hmm.
that are actually hoping to get into the publicity department
Okay.
specifically. So when applicants submit kind of their cover letters and their resumes to the publicity department, what stands out the most? Like what makes you say like, oh, I want to talk to this person more?
I think if somebody uh, came and showed in their application that they had experience managing many things at the same time, uh, like be that a restaurant, be that a whole different, I don't know, like any other field, that's always something that catches my eye because it really fundamentally is the skill set that you need. Like, you need to be able to manage a bunch of different things that are always going to be moving and that are like it just never stops. So I think that is my big thing. And then my other cheeky answer is as long as it's not written by AI. Like
Oh yeah.
if it's
Yeah.
don't use AI in your cover letter. Just don't do
Yeah,
it.
I
Yeah.
think not many people know, but you can actually notice that. Like
For sure.
I've seen
Yeah.
that like just generated AI
Yeah.
content. And it's like you can definitely tell it's not a human. And
Very
especially
much.
when you're applying to publishing, they know how a
We're
human writes.
we
Yeah.
really do. And I once
Mhm.
had a ex-boss tell me that the reason why certain people were selected for interview was simply because their cover letters were not written by AI. It was like we could
Mhm.
out of this huge pile, we just sifted out who didn't use AI.
Absolutely.
So,
Well, that makes sense because you have to, in publishing, you also have to write so much that you need to be able to
totally.
write. So I totally get that.
Yeah.
And with what you were talking about before of like, contacting the media or
Mhm.
getting reviews or even
Mhm.
contacting
Mhm.
influencers, do you expect someone that's going to join the publicity team to already have those media contacts, or is that something that's built up through the job,
Mm.
through the work?
Yeah. No, I don't think that people need to necessarily have those contacts when they come in. I definitely didn't have them coming into my first role, but I do think there's a certain disposition towards relationships that is very, very useful. And so would be another really, really important asset, which is like an ability to maintain and cultivate new relationships. Because you really these are like really important people for the books and for the general success of the press, so you want to make sure that you're really taking care of those relationships. So it would be more like, can I see that this person is well integrated into their community and they really care about other people's success and they really are uplifting others and making new connections. That would be more of what I would look for than contacts.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense, especially because as a publicist, you're like in contact with so many people each day that you definitely need to have that skills of like
Mm-hmm.
cultivating your relationship, but also maintaining them. So
Yeah.
like in years before, like after, you can like actually contact the person that you just cultivated a relationship with. So that makes
Exactly.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know for many departments in the publishing industry, having a portfolio is important.
Hmm.
And because it's publishing, like having like a portfolio that shows your writing is also important. But when it comes to publicity, especially, how important is to have that portfolio and what kind of things people should kind of show in that portfolio? Are
Mm.
writing samples important, or how does that work?
Um, well, for publicity, I would say that the portfolio would mainly contain pitching, right? Like pitching is like the big place where writing and that kind of creative mind and that analytical, interpretive part of your job come in because it's your job to kind of translate the book to different audiences. So when I'm pitching, one of our titles that just came out is called Palestine and Feminist Liberation. So if I'm pitching that book to, I don't know, like the Globe and Mail, I'm going to pitch it very, very differently to a local newspaper like The Grind. Like the type of the way that the book will be interpreted for both of those audiences very different. So I think in an ability to create impactful pitches and to know how to structure your honestly your emails, because that is the majority of where this happens. You have to be like a really, really good email writer and a really, really effective communicator, not necessarily in the sense of like a long type of thing. That's not my
Yeah, but just
personal.
like in a few
Yeah,
lines.
yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, but actually, that's me being biased again because some people write quite long pitch emails and
Hmm.
like to put a lot of information. So it's stylistic. That would be what you would be portraying. Like, what kind of
Right. Hmm.
style of pitcher are you?
Absolutely. No, I see that. Like that makes sense. And do candidates also, as you said, like
Hmm.
I bet like when it comes to like the catalog for a season, you have different genres, you have
Hmm.
different authors, you have different
Hmm.
stories. So do candidates also need to demonstrate that they are comfortable promoting books that are outside of their personal taste?
Always. Yeah, it's the most consistent question I've been asked at interviews. It's how would you promote a book you didn't like? And what would you do? And yeah, you have to really be able to be very professional and very mindful of like putting those parts of yourself aside and just focusing on what's the best thing for the book.
Yeah, no, yeah, and I bet that's so important, especially in publicity, because you're not, for anyone listening, you're not gonna get every single time books that it's your personal
No,
taste at all,
exactly.
because like a catalog of a press is like
Mm-hmm.
filled with everything that you're going to publish in a season, so you have to get comfortable with that. Yeah,
Totally, totally.
absolutely, that makes sense. And are there any kind of like small details or extra things that Candace have done in the past, that kind of like have caught your eye, that had made them like kind of like stand out when it comes to like maybe like resumes, cover letters, or even
Mm.
interviews?
I think one of the things that comes to my mind is I mean, there's really no getting past it, but a well designed resume and like a very, very clearly, nicely designed resume is a huge asset. I think people um, know it, but it's still something that we maybe take a little bit for granted. But I think it's a worthwhile investment. And also, yeah, community. I think just based on my own path in publishing, I look really closely at community connections. So, like, what is somebody hoping to get involved in, and how much are they involved on the community level in something like that? So, like, if we're in publishing, how much is the candidate, let's say, involved in their particular city in different kind of literary organizations or groups or book clubs, bookstores? How much are they kind of like connected on that level? That's really important for publicity in particular, so it's something I always look for.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that that's a great tip for anyone that's wants to get into the publicity department. If you want to
Mm-hmm.
like start connecting with your community, that's a place where you can
For
start.
sure, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Well, it's time for a fun break for you because I've asked you many questions and you've talked a lot. So we're just gonna do our literary rapid fire quiz. You can
Okay.
just answer as quickly as you can. You don't have to overthink. I
Okay.
think these are easy enough questions.
Hmm.
So the first one is, what's your favorite book genre?
Poetry.
Perfect. What's your go-to author on your current author at the moment?
Heather Crystal.
Oh, nice. What's your preferred reading and snack if you have one?
French fries.
Oh, I see that. Yeah, that's a good one. What's the best book format for you? Hardcover, paperback, ebook, or audiobook?
Paperback.
Good. Buy or borrow books?
Borrow.
Good. One book you wish you could read again for the first time?
Tale for the Time Being by Ruth Ozeki.
Oh, very nice. Your reading beverage, tea or coffee, or if you have anything else that you prefer to drink?
Water.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Morning reader or night reader?
Night reader.
Okay. Are you a fast or a slow reader?
I think I'm pretty fast.
Okay. Good. And if you could recommend one book to anyone listening, what would it be?
I just read a lot of poetry books by Mary Oliver, so I would recommend Swan, um,
Oh,
Poems and
very
Prose
nice.
Poems by Mary Oliver.
Very nice. Okay, that's it. You survived our literary rapid fire quiz, as it was painless. And now, since we're getting to the end of the interview, we're going to go for a little Q&A from the community. So what they are asking is, I think we already got into this, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Hmm.
What's the difference between publicity and marketing? And how are they separate, or how do they overlap?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, well, we did get into this, but
Mhm.
I would say publicity is front facing, marketing is back facing. Publicity tends to be things that face readers, and marketing tends to be things that face other people who interact with readers, so like booksellers,
Mhm.
librarians, distributors, etc.
Okay, yeah, no, thank you so much for that. Do publicists read every book they promote, or how many can you handle at once?
Okay, this is our kind of open secret, which is that which is that I am busy doing my job
Hmm.
about the book. And so it is unfortunately rare that I read the book in full. I
Yeah.
do always try to read the introduction of every
Hmm.
book and the beginning,
Okay.
and I do try to look through it when it's at like the review copy stage. But I would put it for myself personally at a very low percentage. Other publicists are different. I
Hmm.
know one of my friends who's a publicist reads every single book, but I tend to be more focused on other things. So I would say I read 1 in 10, maybe 2 in 10.
That's okay. I don't think you're alone because I've talked to editors and they're like, yeah, we don't have a lot of time to read. We're busy doing other things. Like
Yeah.
when we read manuscripts is actually like outside of our work hours. So I don't think,
Mm-hmm.
working in publishing, and this is
Yeah.
something that most people don't know, you don't have a lot of time to read because
No.
you're busy doing your job, as you said.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. They also ask, what does a typical day look like for you during like a busy season, like a major book launch or maybe a festival?
Ooh, this just happened. Fall is so busy.
Yeah.
So I would say I get to the office, I look through some mail, I will set up some things that need to be mailed, I'll look through web orders, I'll look through what needs to be promo shipped, I'll take care of some events. There will be probably a few media requests that need to be answered. What else? There's probably some author care that needs to happen because it's busy for them too at this time. So I'm maybe be on the phone or be over email. Social media will need to happen, et cetera, et cetera. And then the day will keep going on. And then there's always like admin. So there's always other things happening, email campaigns that need to be scheduled, grant reports that need to be written. So those all tend to happen
Yeah.
at the same
At
time.
the same time. Yeah, that makes sense. Publicists are busy.
Yeah.
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 And how do you decide which titles get priority, but not priority, more like larger campaigns when it comes to like maybe like the catalog list for like a fall? Yeah.
Yeah, totally. It usually is based on the author's community connections. If the author has really big community connections, it will naturally lead to a larger publicity campaign.
I see. Hmm.
So there have been like two authors that are coming to my mind that I've worked with in my life who naturally will just generate so much publicity because of who they are. And that is just part and parcel of acquiring them as an author. So I think that if you have really deep community connections where you've been really involved for a long time, people really know you in relation to the subject that um, you are a part of. Like one of the authors who I think I'm fine to share was Elle Jones, who is like a long time um, really strong activist among abolitionists, and then she released this book with Fernwood called Abolitionist Intimacies. So there was just so many people across Canada who wanted to host her, to work with her, and to feature the book. So that would be what I think determines it most of all um, is the author's own connections.
Okay, yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And the very last one that we have is many people that want to get into the industry, they are worried about, I don't have a network, I don't have any connections in the industry. When it comes to specifically the publicity department, which is
Mm-hmm.
what we're talking about today, is it important to, even if you're not in the industry yet, even if you're not hired yet into a publishing house, to start networking with people that are and like start getting maybe your knowledge that way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, networking, community making, they are pretty synonymous. So I would say it is really important. And I think, like we said earlier, like just go to a local event of a book that you like. Go to the publisher, your dream publisher that you hope to be hired by. Go to all of their events. Just talk to them, introduce yourself, support their press. And I think those little actions help create the happy accidents that we were talking about at the very beginning, because the more and more people that you know, the more and more you'll be primed to kind of enter at a moment like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great. Well, that was our last Q&A. So, Sune, thank you so much for joining us. This conversation was so amazing and so insightful for
Oh,
anyone that's to get into the publicity department. But before we wrap up, where can listeners follow you or learn more about your work?
sure. Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram. I'm at Sanna Wani, and then um, I think that's really the main public facing thing that I have. And I have a book coming out next year with House of Anansi Press, so that's really
So
exciting.
exciting. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So stay tuned for more,
that's
I
great.
guess.
And do we know, can we know the title of that
Oh
book?
yeah, of course. It's called Lantern, and it
Very
is
nice.
my second book of poetry with them. Yeah.
Oh, so exciting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, one last thing. I know that many people that are listening are probably at the beginning of their careers.
Hmm.
And I know that it can be tough to like keep in or holding on in the industry after many
Hmm.
rejections. So, can you share like a few encouraging words for those people that are at the start of their careers and they're just feeling a bit down right now?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think I would say that your passion really matters, and who you are is a unique as a unique and helpful individual is going to work for the right place at the right
Hmm.
time. And so to just keep on, loving books, because
Yeah.
as much as like we all get caught in the kerfuffle of things, we all get caught in the busyness and the daily
Hmm.
work, like one thing that bonds all of us together is our love of
Yeah.
this medium, which is
Yeah.
which is books. So keep loving books, keep being passionate about them, and yeah, just find and make some community, and I think things will keep following where they are. And yeah, keep on keeping on because it is a very hard time right now. But
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's great. Thank you so much for that. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us. This was such an amazing conversation, and I know people are going to appreciate it. So, thank you.
Thanks.
And that's it for today's episode. Next episode, we're going to be joined by Stephanie Sinclair from Big Random House Canada. So make sure to follow and subscribe so you do not miss that episode. You can also visit our website, publishingguide.com, for free resources and information about this season's guests. Follow us on Instagram at The Publishing Guide for updates and behind the scenes content. Remember to leave in the comments any questions that you want to see in any future Q&As. Please note that any views expressed in this podcast are personal and do not reflect the opinions of the host or guest employers. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.